Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi have spoken. It is a call that has been described as a long conversation by the US president, who said that the two leaders discussed everything. And one of the more intriguing comments that Trump made on record was that India will do, quote unquote, the right thing when it comes to illegal Indian migrants in the United States of America. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we'll be looking at that big phone call between Prime Minister Modi and American President Donald Trump. Trump, since he's been inaugurated, has announced a series and a slew of measures that have reversed American policy that has otherwise been followed over the decades. Trump is clearly signaling the beginning of a new world order. But what might that order mean for India, India's interests, both national security and economic interests? Remember, Trump has, during the campaign and even in the last few hours, spoken about tariffs against BRICS nations, including India. But at the same time, Trump has gone on record after his phone call with Prime Minister Modi saying that the United States of America shares a very good relationship with India. Trump said Modi and he spoke about everything. The everything as described by the MEA, and the White House has covered the situation in Ukraine, the situation in West Asia, or the Middle East as it's called by the Western nations. And also, the White House readout talks about an increase in the purchase of America made military equipment, as well as what the Americans are calling a fairer bilateral trading relationship. What does the Trump presidency mean for India? What is the good news and what should be raising alarm bells? Let's introduce our very distinguished set of experts today. Dr. Sanjay Baru, veteran journalist, editor, former advisor in the Manmohan Singh government, is with us. Always good to see you, Dr. Baru. Also joining us is Ambassador Manjeev Puri, veteran diplomat. Always good to have you with us, sir. And also joining us, another veteran diplomat, Ambassador Seth. Manju, Seth, ma'am, it's always good to see you as well. Before I get the two diplomats to come in, Sanjay, you've kind of seen life from both sides. You've seen life from inside government when the Manmohan Singh regime was negotiating the Indo-US nuclear deal. You've seen life from the outside as an editor and a journalist looking in. When you hear Trump, it all seems to be a somewhat romantic relationship, if one can call it that, the personal rapport between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. He's gone on record to say it's a great relationship. The two leaders had a great conversation, and that, quote unquote, India will do the right thing when it comes to illegal migrants, a pet cause of the Trump presidency. Your early impressions, Sanjay Baru?
Well, Barkha, of course, India will do the right thing. I think Jaishankar has already said that we will take back illegal migrants. Incidentally, many of them come from the state of Gujarat. And I don't see the Indian government rejecting that. So that's okay. I don't think that's the most important part of that conversation. To me, the most important part of that conversation is about Trump telling us that buying security-related equipment, which is a phrase he used, is one way of reducing the trade deficit. Now, India exports services and goods on a competitive basis, and imports defense equipment through state-to-state negotiations. So clearly, Donald Trump hopes that we will buy more defense equipment from the United States as a way of bridging that trade deficit. Now, you began by saying that Trump is talking about a new world order. I'm afraid I belong to what seems to be a rather minority of opinion that this is the old economic order or the old global order. The United States has been a dominant power since the Second World War, and particularly after the end of the Cold War. People talked about a unipolar world. Trump is recovering space. His ability to assert American power, in my judgment, is not that great as it was in the immediate post-war period in the 50s or in the post-Cold War period in the 90s. There are many of us in the world today who have the ability to stand on our own feet. And I don't think we should get carried away with all this stuff. The US economy is not as strong as many imagine it to be, though it has done well in the last 10 years. But we see on a daily basis other economies, including our own, doing much better. And so I would not exaggerate the significance of all the Trumpisms that the media kind of has been reporting. Yes, we will buy more defense equipment. I think that's the bottom line of this conversation. We will do that in order to kind of, make Mr. Trump issue an invitation to the Prime Minister so that the Prime Minister can visit in February. This is how, diplomacy is done.
Okay. In fact, that invitation has already been issued. Whether or not that equipment is going to be purchased, Trump did tell reporters, Ambassador Puri, that Prime Minister Modi would be headed to the United States of America, perhaps as early as February. Do you agree with Dr. Sanjaya Baru that the emphasis on illegal migrants is not the most important thing, and that the most important thing actually lies in the last few lines of the White House readout? And I'm going to just pick up two comments from there. One is that Trump urged Modi. This is according to the White House readout. We have a much more general statement from our own foreign ministry that Trump urged India to increase the procurement of America-made military equipment. This is in the readout. And the other thing that the White House readout talks about is that India was urged to move towards a more fair bilateral trading relationship. Read into it what you will. What do you read into it, Ambassador Manjeev Puri?
So, Barkha, thank you very much. I think first, can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Barkha,
Yeah.
The first thing I want to say is, let's understand President Trump, what he has done, and let's try and contextualize ourselves in that particular context. So one of the things that his White House puts out, and he puts out, the world should respect America. What he means is that what they say you should do. That's exactly the way they look at it. Now, in his campaign, the big themes were, what were they? One was migration, and we can keep saying it's about Latin America, but the fact is that wherever you are there, he's pointed it out to you. Now, one way of looking at it is that we said, yes, we will take them back. After all, we have done this with other countries in the past. Even with the United States, people keep coming back routinely who are caught and so on and so forth. But you remember one thing, we had to make a bit of a clarificatory statement after the first one saying, yes, we will take them back. And somebody had to clarify and saying, which are verified Indian citizens. So, these two readouts are a bit different, because the readout from India, if it says, Donald Trump said, I said this, and there was a yes sir there. From this side, you can't say that. Can you say that, we agreed to buy more new military equipment? You can't say that. But this is an old story vis-a-vis the United States. We bought a lot of military equipment, upped our amount of military equipment we bought when we were entering into close negotiations with them, when this relationship was being built up, the civil nuclear deal, etc. Whether that's the best equipment for the money that you weigh, that's a different matter. But we've been doing it in the past. In terms of people, this sort of stuff is not something which people don't understand, and a government like India, for which the United States is perhaps the most important international relationship. Would you really like to find that the President of the United States always finds some fault with you? It's a little bit of a difficult thing to start with. So we'll have to see it. I don't think that people is not an important thing, but without doubt, trade matters, because it's a huge, big business. And these code words, fair trade, etc., are something that we will have to come to grips with. He is a transactional person. But for me, Barkha, the more important thing is not the bilateral relationship in this sense. Prime Minister Modi perhaps has a good chemistry with him. President Trump has said he will come there in February. All very good. It's what develops, at least in the coming several months, between President Trump and the Chinese. And that's something that we need to watch out for, because, at the end of the day, this relationship has a huge bilateral component, but it also, I'm afraid, has a huge regional component. And we are one of the countries, or perhaps the most important country, where this China business is a little different from the way, let's say, the Brazilians would look at it, or anybody else would look at it.
Yeah. Before I go to Ambassador Manju, do you want to just elaborate on that last point that, we should be looking out for that? You see, Trump could go either ways with the Chinese. He could either ratchet up the acrimony, or he could actually cut a deal with the Chinese. He isn't beyond that, right? What should India be monitoring or looking at closely?
So, Barkha, let's be very clear. among all the interviews that I've heard President Trump give in the last few days, the two people he has praised have been President Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. So, you can say whatever it is, but this is the nature of the transactional individual that we are talking about. And let's understand the Chinese ability to cut deals is far more than what we are in a position to do. And they have done it in the past. The beginning of 2016, they found a few chinks. They worked on that. In the end, the trade deal which he worked out with the Chinese couldn't be worked out because there are many other aspects in the United States. Trade is a matter where the Congress also has a certain say, etc. But this time he's come back, and supposing the Chinese say, we will invest a hell of a lot more in the United States. We'll build more plants there. We'll do more action there. And he's able to get back to his MAGA crowd and say, we've got them here. They are going to be doing. They will say, good idea. We have a 5,000-year civilization. Let's wait through these 4 years. Let's see what happens. The fallout is on a country like us. Why? Because of this bilateral issues, the border issues, etc., the competition in Asia, all of this particular thing. It is not the case even with Europe. It's not the case with Latin America and Africa. We have a particular issue and sensitivity. I'm not sure how mindful Donald Trump will be of that and how important it will be with him, this business of contestation. How open would he be to deal making? From now, it would appear that he is open.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Trump has always prided himself, Ambassador Manju said, on the art of the deal. And I think what Manjeev Puri is reminding us is that deal could include the Chinese. You never know. It would be a triumphant sort of moment for Trump if he managed to cut something that he could sell to the American people with the Chinese, which brings into question the Quad. The Quad meeting of ministers has already taken place. Mr. Jaishankar, our foreign minister, was there in the front row, yes, at that inauguration, but soon after there was a meeting of the Quad. What would be your area of focus in that readout from the White House, in Trump's statements on record, and in the much more calibrated, careful statement from India's foreign ministry, from our foreign ministry?
I would just like to also add to what Ambassador Puri has said. Yes, these are important. And of course, the China factor is looming very large in the relationship. We can't deny that. And with Quad, I think there will be renewed push to Quad. And as you very rightly mentioned, it was the first, sort of foreign, international, you can say, meeting with the Quad foreign ministers in the US immediately after his swearing in. So it's a very important coming together, because one of the main mandates, you can say, of the Quad is to ensure the Indo-Pacific, the freedom of navigation, etc., and to counter China's intentions in the Indo-Pacific. And the chances of a deal are very high. I think of the China and US reaching a deal. Their chances are extremely high because, as very rightly mentioned by Ambassador Puri, the Chinese are much better than us, much more shrewder, much more smarter than the Indians in cutting deals. And I think they will they will find a kind of way out of this. And also, I think that is one of the reasons why Donald Trump invited, President Xi Jinping for his inauguration. Whether he didn't come, obviously he wouldn't come, and many other, senior leaders, so to speak, of world leaders were not coming or not being invited. So they would, so that is a very clear signal to them, to China, that we need to work out a deal. And China is going to, and today also, I don't know if that could also be related to this, the fall in the stock market of the US due to this Chinese equivalent of ChatGPT. I think could be also a factor. So you ruin the stock market, you ruin the shares of Nvidia, and you see how what is happening. It's a very subtle kind of way of functioning, and also get and negotiate from a position of strength. See, we can control your this thing. And on the Indian side, I think we gave a much more, I think a more anodyne kind of statement, because we didn't want to, we want to say that everything is good. We agree everything is good, and as far as the tariff wars goes, we will find solutions. I think that already, we were looking at. I think because the trade imbalance is quite high, so I think we will try and look at that. And the fair trade is something
Yeah.
which I also work on.
So it's interesting. Both our diplomats, Dr. Baru, seem to think that China and the US could well cut a deal, and that's something where India has to protect our own back. But before we come to that and the tariffs question, on this point of the invitation that Ambassador Manju said just referred to Xi Jinping, there was a lot of debate here in India over, Jaishankar being at the inauguration, but not the Prime Minister. Trump is now saying Modi's coming. He's coming in February. Was that just political rhetoric, or did you read meaning into Xi Jinping getting that invite?
Oh, of course, there's meaning. I don't think Trump does anything without meaning. I'm pretty sure there was very powerful signaling in the fact that Donald Trump invited Xi Jinping for his inauguration. And by name, the only world leader that he invited in person, the Europeans lined up to attend. Some of them finally got an invitation and some did not. Jaishankar did a good job lobbying in Washington. That ended up in his getting an invitation, so we had to run around finding out what the hell is happening. I think, frankly, the day Donald Trump invited Xi Jinping, I don't think many would have slept in South Block and in our embassy in Washington. It was a message. I think it's a clear message, and I'm hearing a lot of people, like the two diplomats on this show, draw attention to this fact. And, I've had some correspondence with some other retired diplomats in the last few days after my column appeared in the Indian Express. I think there is now a sense that there is a new game in town. It's not just China bashing. There may be an attempt to strike a deal. Whether a deal is struck or not will depend on what hand Xi plays. The DeepSeek announcement today or yesterday, the timing is interesting. This must have been in the pipeline with the Chinese for some days. They must have waited for a week, all the brouhaha after the inaugural to settle down before shocking the markets. Now, I think really, I would not, go on and on about Trump inviting Modi or Trump having a nice conversation with Modi.
No, but I want to ask you. You said South Bloc wouldn't have slept the day he made that invitation to Xi Jinping by name, and I can see Ambassador Puri nodding in agreement with that. But then Jaishankar ended up in the front row. Do you think it was, do you think it kind of cancelled out there, or you still think it's a live issue? I want all three to react to that.
Look, Jay is a good friend. I don't want to say. I'm sure he worked hard to make sure that he sat in the front row. And the Americans would have said, "Theek hai bhai, usko bitha do," because we forgot to call Modi. We called only Xi. Come on, I think we should make a big deal. The media, I believe, in Delhi has made a big deal. I didn't watch all those news. Why this is the circus that goes on? Frankly, let's get down to some hard realities.
Yeah.
The hard reality is that China is in a different league. And as I think Mr. Puri said very correctly, for India, that is an important concern, unlike for many other developing countries. Now, what is the option for India? Do we behave like other former occupied nations of the United States? Japan is an occupied nation. Most of Europe was an occupied territory of the US after the Second World War. Australia and United Kingdom are part of the American empire. We are not. We see ourselves as an independent nation from day one, from 1947.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should be behaving like supplicants. I mean, when I see in the media, Joe Meloni from Italy went there and Jaishankar met him, big deal. What is Italy? An occupied nation. Couldn't have been liberated without the Americans landing up there from Mussolini's dictatorship. Look, the fact is India is in a different league. And I really think the most important diplomatic initiative that Prime Minister Modi has taken, at least in the last 5 years, was the outreach to China. The fact that Vikram Misri was there last couple of days in Beijing, right? Yeah. I think we are now understanding the game a little more differently. We are not playing the game that we tried to play during Prime Minister Modi's first term of behaving like supplicants in Washington D.C., which we were. Every time the Indian Prime Minister and the US President met, whether it was Obama or Biden, I mean, we were all thinking that, great friendship, look at the body language, they're holding each other's hand. What nonsense is this? We have an independent foreign policy. We have a foreign policy that emphasizes our strategic autonomy. Of course, we have concerns about China. But this Quad business is not going to solve your problems with China. There's a fancy notion that somehow we meet in Quad and the Chinese problems. Quad has two allies for the United States, supplicant allies. Neither Japan nor Australia can survive without American support. India cannot take the view that I cannot survive without American support. I have to take the view that I will survive on my own. And that is what distinguishes India from all these other countries. We call ourselves leaders of the global South. So let us behave. Let us behave like we ought to behave and not get too excited about this Trump hugging Modi and haath mein hug. Bollywood.
Let's get the diplomats to respond to this. Ambassador Puri, it's interesting. The rapprochement with the Chinese seemed to come out of nowhere, in the sense that there wasn't at that time certainly visible progress on the border disengagement, and then it did take place. India remains suspicious of the Chinese. The China continues to build up infrastructure in the highest reaches of the mountains, where troops were standing eyeball to eyeball, even in eastern Ladakh. But Sanjay Baru says India's outreach to China, the fact that today that relationship is functional again, it certainly isn't what it was in 2020, right after Galwan. The fact that there is highest level of contact between Xi Jinping and the Prime Minister does seem to have preempted a scenario where the Americans cut a deal with the Chinese, and then India is sort of left all high and dry, having invested all of its eggs in the American basket.
So, Barkha, let's be a little clear about one thing. I am completely with Sanjay. I like what he said about strategic autonomy. That's the India that I know. We are the largest country in the world. We talk about fifth largest economy becoming the third largest. I have grown up and always stood for the fact that we have to have our strategic autonomy. But mind you, even in my former office in the South Block, there are many who don't think that the idea of this strategic autonomy should be meant complete policy space and so on. There are people with differing views and so on, and perhaps they are much more powerful in the game as it is today. As far as the Chinese is concerned, let's understand a little bit of the timings and so on. The Kazan meeting was the first one. We were facing domestically a lot of backlash from the Indian industry, etc. That, national security lens on doing business with the one country that you can really do business is not such a great idea. It was hurting our industry, our economy, tremendous amount of issues. Secondly, you're going on and on. Let's look at it from the Chinese perspective. You saw this gentleman was coming there. He'd come there. Now, in this particular scenario, what was the point of opening another front? Let's be a little easy. We've already achieved what we had to achieve in the heights of Tibet and Galwan and so on and so forth. Let's wait a little bit. And in the past, there have been any number of incidents. President Xi Jinping comes to India, sits on the swing, and they have their troops getting in there. So, they've built the infrastructure, they do it. There's a good reason why we are suspicious and so on. That doesn't mean that you don't have to try and make the relationship functional. Please note, even at the height of the tension, it was we who were saying no. It wasn't them who were saying no. And there's a good reason why we are saying no, because of the disparities in the size of the economies and so on and so forth. They matter to us, we matter to them also. Let's be clear on that. But let's also understand the distinguishing feature of who matters how much to whoever, etc. It was important for us to do it, and very good that we've taken it. Greatest thing, Sanjay, I don't know if I can agree with that, but a good move that we are working on a functional relationship. Of that, in my mind, nothing at all. The United States. Look, I don't think President Trump is paying much attention to the India-China issue in his understanding of US-China relations. We would like to believe that Indo-Pacific is central to the United States. To Donald Trump, no, he hasn't mentioned the word Taiwan. He hasn't mentioned the word Indo-Pacific. Nothing of that kind at all. His understanding of China is related to this trade business, and secondly, yeah, new kid on the block, but a pretty big one. What do I deal with him? He might, as I said, people do say, be a little cautious and be wary and be on the lookout for possibilities of deals, because at the end of the day, perhaps without meaning it to be the case, it would be, in a sense, not the best of things for you. Because, again, to use the words that Mr. Baru said, look at the Quad. There are two people who are allies. If you recall, the first statement of Marco Rubio about the Quad was allies. India very softly put out no ally, friends, partners, and so on and so forth. Look, this is the relationship. Let's understand President Donald Trump has come back with a bit of a big mandate domestically. He has the issue of being, let me say, respect for the United States. And this respect, if you don't mind, in common parlance, is that of the big guy saying, my way and no other way. You guys better agree to it. In a sense, because you need that relationship, people are saying for the time being, we'll be practical. Let's say yes. Let's see what happens, and we'll have a look at it. The Colombian case is there in front of you. The Europeans have said we have a practical approach. People will bide their time. We also need to have a look at it. But that's the nature of this particular thing. 25%.
So you're not sounding, before I come to Ambassador Manju, say it all sort of starry-eyed. The conventional assumption when Trump won was he was going to be better for Indian interests than Biden. You don't agree with that?
If you're asking me, Barkha, if you remember, I told you on your show that Indians are just waiting for Trump to get elected. Before the 8th of November, we did a show and I said, yes, they were. But now suddenly, there are other people also who are there, who are saying, yes, all that is very good. And this will change after this statement that Prime Minister Modi is going there in February. They'll all become again starry-eyed, etc., etc. But there are many others in the scheme of things who are also pointing a little bit to the thing that, look, man, there's I don't want to use that 5-letter word, but, there's a very tough guy there whose understanding is simply my way or the highway. And that's also something which is being quietly pointed out by various people.
Yeah. Ambassador Manju said, do you agree? Do you think that basically Trump is a kind of global bully? Ambassador Puri didn't use that phrase, but that his understanding of the world order is my way or the highway. Indians don't do well, irrespective of which government, India's strategic autonomy, India's resistance to being anyone's ally. You could have called it non-alignment in Nehru's time, and you can call it multilateralism in Modi and Jaishankar's time. The bottom line is the same thing. We aren't anybody's allies. We aren't any one country's allies. We're not taking one country and putting ourselves in that camp. And I think there will be increasing pressure from the Trump presidency to pick a side. And to that extent, the fact that we have a rapprochement with the Chinese is very important.
Absolutely. President Trump is going to try and, as you use the word, bully India into towing their line, into agreeing to their terms and conditions. But I think today's India is a little stronger, more self-confident, and I think in a better position to negotiate. And they understand now the core of how Trump functions and how he is. And America, and he wants to show Americans how great he has, what great work he has done to make in America again and to make America great again, and to how he has handled everybody. And with India, yes, he does want India to toe the line, but he also, I think, understands that India will not be so easily bullied. That's what I feel. He also understands that. That is why he has been talking about tariffs, but retracting. And, a little back and forth, we can see how he had said tariffs right in the beginning, but he didn't actually impose the tariffs after he took over. And as far as the H-1B visa, there also I see some ambiguity. Elon Musk saying that, no, H-1B visas are important. And he's also toned down his H-1B visa rhetoric. So I think and Indians, of course, are the biggest beneficiaries of the H-1B. So I think he will not totally do away with that, but he will try and negotiate as much as he can and try and get a better deal for the US. I think that's what he will try. And very rightly, he's not going to, do anything about China vis-a-vis India or India vis-a-vis China. He's not going to do that. He will do only what for the US, what's good for the US, how US will benefit with all this. I think the chessboard, with whom is, where he's going and with whom he will what's his next move. I think he's going to be moving in that, functioning in that.
As the Chinese would say, we certainly live in interesting times. Before I take last comments from all three of you, Trump and tariffs. Just in the last 24 hours, where he went on record to talk about his great relationship with India, his long chat with Modi at another event, he once again reiterated his position on tariffs. And I want to actually just play that out and then take last comments from all of you. Let's listen in.
That the whole thing was wiped out by China mostly, but others, and just wiped out. But it's going to come back. It's going to come roaring back. It's all going to come roaring back. We're going to put tariffs on outside countries and outside people that really mean us harm. They want to, well, they mean us harm, but they basically want to make their country good. Look at what others do. China's a tremendous tariff maker, and India and Brazil and so many countries. And so we're not going to let that happen any longer, because we're going to put America first. Always put America first. That's what's going to happen. We're going to establish a very fair system where money is going to come into our coffers, and America is going to be very rich again, and it's going to happen very quickly.
America is going to be very rich again. It's going to happen very quickly. India does get mentioned in a by the way sort of way there. So does China. Let's talk about Trump and tariffs and juxtapose this with the White House readout on a fairer trading relationship, a fairer bilateral trading relationship. Now, Ambassador Seth, I'll start with you. We'll take last comments. US is India's largest trading partner. The two-way trade between the two countries in 2023-24 surpassed $118 billion, right? Do you agree with Sanjay Baru's somewhat cynical opening take that this fair bilateral trading relationship is just code for buy our equipment?
Partly, yes, absolutely. But also, I think buy equipment, but buy other products as well. They're looking at pushing their products into India. Right now, we have I think 35 billion, if I'm not mistaken, $1 billion surplus with them. So they would like that to be, bridged and have a fair trade, equitable trade. But at the same time, we do have a little leeway in this, and we buy their military equipment. We also can buy their other equipment for, artificial, pharmaceuticals, for other equipment, machinery. There are many things that we do need from the US. And I think already I was reading they have, decided to buy some drones, the special drones that they wanted. I think 38 or some such number ordered that. So I think this is what he's looking for, to push in America, push everyone to take action so that the trade deficit is bridged. And I think that's what he's trying to do. And the BRICS thing, I think, if I may comment on that as well, I feel that yes, it was more in the context, I think, of de-dollarization and not using the dollar for BRICS transactions. And India had already said we're not part of that. We don't support de-dollarization. But yes, we have been talking of using local currencies. But I don't know how, because there also I think the yuan will be the main player, so it will not be very beneficial for India to get into that transaction kind of thing, where the yuan will be more used for transactions and BRICS.
Ambassador Puri, talking about the Chinese, I mean, I think Sanjay, you referred to DeepSeek, sort of the China AI game to counter ChatGPT, OpenAI, and so on. And China is no adolescent at diplomacy. If Trump is going to try and get his pound of flesh from the Chinese will be playing their own sort of double game here. What is India's biggest concern as these chess pieces are moved on the board?
Barkha, look, India's concern has to be that India is in a position to develop and to keep its national security well in place. So there comes that Chinese angle, but very importantly, that we develop ourselves, become the third largest economy, and become a much richer and a bigger player. That's what gets you a place on the global high table. Your people become better, etc. The United States being the largest economy in the world, the purveyor of the largest technologies, one with whom we don't have an inimical relationship, as in the case of China. We have 3 odd million people of our origin in the United States. All of these things make them, if I may use Prime Minister Vajpayee's words, a natural partner. So, strategic, natural, you can use all that without using the word ally. We feel more comfortable. We want to do it. We want to take this forward. But, let's be very clear. This word fair trade, what does it mean in Mr. Trump's understanding? It means either the trade balance is in his favor, or at best it's equal. It's not that fairness means you get a 10% or more bump for me. He is going to be very hard. We bought this equipment in the past to make things mellow down. Congress and others look at India a little better. But if it becomes much harder, why is it that we are not importing large amounts from the United States? Because they are not competitive. Because some of them just don't happen. Ask people in the Indian industry, in steel, in power sector, etc. Do they want to import from the United States? No, they don't. Because they are absolutely uncompetitive and no-go. In fact, they are buying from the Chinese. So this is the nature of the game. It makes it a very, let me say, difficult game. It's not an easy game. Last time you could open Harley Davidsons and so on and so forth. But it isn't going to be only about that. It's going to become much more and a lot more to do. And, frankly, your ability to set up plants there is not like the Chinese. The Hindalcos did it. The Mahindras are doing it, but many others are not in a position to do it. Our companies, their products are not what we call truly globally competitive. Otherwise, they'd be there. It's a tough call. But, look, you have to make tough calls as we progress ourselves. Hopefully, the other side, through chemistry, through diplomacy, through talking with them, will see that in a much greater, larger contestation, here is a country which is a partner and a useful partner. And so within their limitations, within the way they structure their polity in the world, let's take them for what it is, partners.
Yeah, Dr. Baru, would you agree with that? Because right from Manmohan Singh to Modi, and that's been several decades now, there has been this, I would say, this leaning towards the United States of America for a greater partnership than before. And there's also been some talk about reducing our dependence, for example, on Russia for military equipment. So in of itself, are these all, I'm just arguing from the other side, in of itself, are these all terrible things? Even if we do have to increase our procurement from the Americans, even if there is a certain amount of sort of push to tweak the trading relationship, is it all worrying, or are there some silver linings?
There are silver linings. I won't worry. It's an important relationship, a very important relationship. But the fact is that we should not confuse between what we call a strategic relationship and a commercial relationship. I think often we look at defense imports as defining a strategic relationship. That's the American way of looking at it. As far as we are concerned, we are still net importers of defense equipment. We have an Atmanirbharta strategy for making our own equipment, but that will take time. What are we being asked to do? We are being asked to buy less from Russia and buy more from America. That's the game we began in 2005 when the discussion on the nuclear deal began. The American condition was you start buying more defense equipment. It was Pranab Mukherjee as defense minister who signed the US-India Defense Cooperation Agreement with Condi Rice in 2005 or with Rumsfeld in 2005. And it was because we were agreed to buy defense equipment that the nuclear deal got done, or at least the discussions began on that, right? So the Americans have only one product which they are able to market to the world using their power, which is defense equipment. Whether it is jet engines or missiles or, what is now under this ISET, emerging and critical technologies, all of this, drones, etc., that's one thing they can sell. And that's one thing India needs. But it's basically occupying a share of the market which was earlier catered to by Russia, in which other countries are competing. Sweden, France, Israel, Japan, there are other. So it's a market relationship, which is not governed by WTO, which is why it's a government-to-government relationship. Everything else is under multilateral trading rules. And there, as Manjeev correctly said, the US is not competitive. I mean, even with our existing tariff lines, other countries are exporting to us. No, it's not as if India shut itself off completely. In fact, we run a trade deficit with the rest of the world, right? So the fact is we are importing more than we are exporting. That suggests that we are not a closed economy. Now, if in this kind of a situation the US cannot sell, it's not because we are anti-US. It's because they're not competitive. And so then they're saying, okay, now let's see what we can do to bridge this gap. You buy more defense equipment. And that is somehow being interpreted as a strategic relationship, which I think is a misuse of the concept. But final word on trade, Barkha, the term fair trade, the whole debate on free versus fair trade, in fact, began in the United States 100 years back. That fair trade has always been the slogan of the economy that is on the defensive. And free trade has been the slogan of the economy on the offensive. You look at the literature on this. Jagdish Bhagwati has excellent books looking at the history of this whole concept of free trade versus fair trade. Fair trade, any country that talks of fair trade is on the defensive. And any country that talks of free trade is on the offensive. So you can see the United States is on the defensive.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing is that there are several curveballs that are going to come India's way, where what is said is sounds rosy, but it isn't quite. It's also that you're dealing with a regime or a presidency, which I think everybody agrees. The president of America is transactional, and India would have to be transactional back, without stars in the eyes about front row seats at the inauguration. Good. India's place in the world being recognized is great. Makes everybody feel proud as Indians. But it isn't all, it isn't all roses and romance. There's a lot of hard deal making that is involved, and a lot of pressure on who blinks first. And I just think that the contrast between the two readouts tells you all about how the styles of diplomacy are going to be very different. Look at our foreign ministry is very, very careful. Ambassador said anodyne statement, but consciously anodyne, not because we can't write better. It's deliberately anodyne, contrasted with the White House's nudging statement on fair trade and buying more American equipment. I think that in itself tells the story. We leave it there. Thank you so much, Dr. Baru, ambassadors Manjeev, Puri, and Manju Seth. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, and see you soon. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.